G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
So Kurt, thanks so much for making the time to catch up. I'm really looking forward to this discussion for a number of reasons. Kurt, you're the director of a consulting firm, Intelligent Business Thinking, and you specialize in employee engagement and organizational culture. And like I say, looking forward to this chat because I know what a critical factor employee engagement and culture is. I guess the challenge, as seen by most of the clients that I work with, is how do we actually make a difference there while we're so busy working on all the other stuff in our business? When do we actually have time to specifically think about culture and make things happen? So, look, I might throw it over to you to kick things off, and maybe you can just tell me a little bit more in your words around what you do. And I guess what I'm particularly interested in is who do you work for and why is it that people reach out to you? Like what's the problem that you're typically seeing that business owners come to you for?
Well, Rob, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk to you. And I hope your audience gets a lot out of this. So let me just kick off. Yeah. So I was born and educated in Melbourne, and I left probably quite unusually for Europe after having graduated and after having got my bachelor's degree in business at Swinburne University. I was over in Europe for almost 27 years and have just returned. And over there, I was always self-employed and considered myself to be a successful entrepreneur, and having had many different businesses, the last 10 years of which I was a business coach, an executive business coach.
Great.
And that kind of came about rather interestingly. And I can find the roots of that back even in my teenage years. I used to play competitive tennis. And Rob, I was always fascinated by the disparity between my day-to-day performance and my potential. And that was always quite a big distance between those two spheres. And that annoyed me somewhat. And from that, I got into sports psychology.
Right.
And I found the answers or the reasons why there is such a disparity. And that ties in with the work that I do today, but I'll get to that. The second thing which kind of lined up for me was I've always had an inherent, let's say, desire to help people. It's just a part of who I am. I just love helping people.
Yeah.
So if we combine those three things, so the fascination with human performance, the desire to help people, and also being an entrepreneur over in Europe myself, having had a few different businesses, I found, it's a cliche, but I found my calling, because when I had those businesses over there, I really didn't have any issues with engagement, with culture, within the organizations that I led. For some reason, it comes naturally to me. And therefore, I saw that the niche appear to me that I can help organizations overcome these kinds of issues. So I was able to leverage that knowledge, that experience, that skill set to helping primarily small businesses, because I feel a lot of empathy towards small businesses because I was one of them.
Yeah.
And I really know what it's like to be in that position when you have so many obligations, you are wearing so many different hats within the organization, you're juggling a lot of things, and it's tough.
Yeah.
And I think, Rob, it's particularly tough here in Australia these days with, the way that things are, whether we call it a recession or whatever we call it, it's not so easy. Interest rates are rising, prices are going up. It's definitely an employee's market. There is a war for talent. And I feel for business owners because it really cannot be easy. So that's like kind of who I am and why I got into things. But your second question was related more to the problems that I solve and what I can offer business owners, what they might get from an association with me. So I was researching something quite some time ago, Rob, that was getting back to maybe 12 years ago. And I came across a statistic from the Gallup organization, the one that does researches and studies and that sort of stuff. And I saw almost exclusively across the world the same scenario, give or take a little bit. And what I'm alluding to is disengagement or the lack of engagement in the workplace across the globe. And Rob, we're talking about numbers that are hovering around the 20% mark. And I was horrified. I was really horrified. I couldn't believe, because I'd never had such an experience myself being an entrepreneur, I couldn't believe that other people were grappling with such a situation. And I was really shocked. But it seemed to me, the deeper I got in my research, that no one seemed to be really doing anything about it. And there was a degree of acceptance there. And I thought, it's hard enough as it is, but having to deal with that as well. And then knowing what I discovered on the tennis court, or let's say through my experiences with tennis, I knew that there's so much more that we can tap into as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, business owners, and so forth. And if we look at the stats from 2022 in Australia, we have 19% engagement. So, Rob, if we turn that around, up to 81% is being left on the table. And that, Lord me, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah. When you put that, it's a big number.
It is a big number. And like I said, I think there's a lot of acceptance there and just, well, that's the way it is. And people are just after money and they will leave anyway and so forth and so forth. But I don't believe that
all
for a
comments
second.
I've heard, definitely.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So, all of this was kind of manifesting itself within me. And I thought, I've got to do something about this. I really felt it, that I needed to, engage this willingness to help. And through my own experiences and what I learned through sports psychology and then psychology and then personal development. So, Rob, to be more specific in regards to your question, business owners, they might be seeing some red flags. These could be office politics. They could be a bit of infighting, could be mistakes being made, misorders, wrong orders, poor communication, lateness arriving to work by employees, people leaving early, let's say more sick days than what we think they should be taking, confusion, wasted resources, poor morale, wasted time, low levels of productivity, less discretionary effort given. And I can go on and on and on. It's like a never-ending story.
This all sounds very familiar. The discussions I have with small business owners, there's often those sort of complaints that they're making. Often, I guess, behind closed doors, but sometimes, openly saying, "Hey, guys, it's just not good enough. I feel like," and I think you explained it well, that the difference between potential and performance is substantial, at least in the eyes of the business owner. So tell me, what is it that business owners need to be aware of and keep in mind to try and avoid some of these issues?
Maybe just a few points before I get to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So, when I talk to business leaders and I start talking about engagement and culture, and this is backed up by the research, Rob, like 90% business leaders, they all recognize that engagement's important, culture is important, and so forth, but fewer than 25% have a plan. And I would contend that of those 25%, how many are actually executing on it? So I think that's really something that we need to think about. So getting on to your question, the best advice I could give to small business owners would just maybe to have an increased awareness with respect to their employees. So from the way that I see things, without good people, we're going to be hard pressed to be successful. And without good people, maybe it's impossible to be successful. Maybe it depends on the business. And I understand that this is completely logical and common sense, but I think it's worth repeating. So as a business owner, as a CEO, as a director, are we really taking responsibility for our greatest asset in our own enterprise, in our own company organization? Because without them, or when there are great degrees of employee turnover, it severely inhibits the ability of the organization to move forward. So that for me is key. So a greater awareness. And Rob, it's backed up. So if you've ever heard the adage, people join organizations, but they leave managers.
Yes.
So this is really key. So what does that actually mean? It means that generally speaking, people are attracted to an organization because of what the organization stands for. It's their principles, it's their core values, it's their belief, it's the way that they behave as an organization. So that's the driving force that brings people to an organization. But when we hear that people leave managers, it's actually very strange for me that an organization, let's say, instills in a manager such power or such responsibility that if that manager is not in tune with the principles, the beliefs, the core values of the organization, the things that have brought the people to the organization, then the people will go the other way. So first and foremost, the manager needs to embody those things, because that's the thing that brought the people there in the first place. So Rob, the other thing is that, there are certain key elements which business owners, should be aware of. And I'm talking now about three key components of what constitutes a miserable job. So it's not just talking about those values that drew the employee to the organization, but there are inherent things that managers and business owners need to be aware of. And I think the opportunity to speak in depth about those things today, we don't have enough time. But what I can say is the second piece of advice that I can give that kind of encompasses all this is to look at the relationships that we have within our organizations. Now, we have two types of relationships, and one I would call transactional. So what I'm talking about here, it's very black and white. It's like what we have in contracts. So if you do this and this work, we will give you this and this money, these benefits, so much holiday pay, superannuation, and so forth. It's very black and white. You do this and we'll give you that. And that's fine. I mean, there has to be that element. But what I would like, or what I propose, or what I teach businesses and business owners is that when we put in place a second type of relationship instead of, or more of this type of relationship, that being emotional based, we are then drawing upon what I said before about those values. We are talking about a connection, a bonding, uniting with the employee, so there's synergy there. And let's face it, Rob, whether we talk about a relationship in business, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a partner relationship, whether it's a relationship with our kids, whoever, if that relationship is strong, then there's a small likelihood that we'll go our own way. But when that relationship is weak, then we go our own way. So we know that emotions are stronger than rational thought. So we need, as business owners, to be aware of that and to, let's say, cement or integrate a more of an emotional connection so that employees feel a part of the organization, not just that it's a transaction, as I mentioned before. So they would be the key takeaways that I would suggest that business owners need to be more aware of.
Yeah, okay.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growasmallbusiness.com.
And just circling back to one of the comments you made a little bit earlier, 3 components of a miserable job.
Yep.
Can you just give me the
Sure.
headings there, the 3 headings?
Of course, yeah. So the first one is that, if we look at transactional relationships, it's very much, as I said, you come in, you do the job, we'll pay you the money. So if there's no emotional component within that, people kind of feel like there's some kind of absence of something. They feel maybe anonymous. They feel that no one cares about them. So there's that element that we need to focus on, a relationship where people feel that they come to an environment, a workplace, where they are respected, where they are valued, where there is good communication, where the manager or owner takes an interest in them, and so forth. So we're talking about a gelling or a connecting there.
Yeah.
The second element is people need to know, and this is really important, people need to know that their work, the work that they do, contributes to the organization or to someone within the organization that helps the organization achieve its goals. So if the organization sets out and has established certain goals, whether they are performance-based figures or, let's say, encompassing a bigger share of the marketplace or whatever, or giving back to the community, whatever, or sell 1 million units of something, that's fine. But as long as the employee sees a clear line between the work that they do and how that contributes to the organization achieving its goals. And the job of a manager or an owner is to make the employees aware of this, to not just say it once and assume that they understand it and think about that all the time, but make them specifically aware. And if it means showing, for instance, if there's someone in accounting, for example, let's say a bookkeeper, so showing that bookkeeper how the work that she does, how that contributes to the financial reports being made, which then helps the owner secure finance or the expansion of the business, but really showing that line of how her job contributes. And without her, that the owner or the manager or the business would be in a far worse position. So that's key. And the last one, Rob, is people need to know that they are somehow improving or getting better in the work that they do. So there needs to be some element of measurability. So, but the important thing here is we cannot rely on the whim of the manager to voluntarily say, hey, Jane, you're doing a great job. Yeah. I can see you're doing your work faster. I can see you're getting, more efficient and so forth. It's up to the manager or the owner to instill some kind of mechanism where the employee himself or herself can actually measure that without having to try to extract from a manager or a person of authority some kind of compliment with respect to the work or the improvement they're doing. That's key. So those 3 elements have to be present. If they're not present, it really makes things tough.
Yeah. So, and look, I guess as I look back at this list, it looks like it makes heaps of sense. So the first thing we're looking for is some emotional connection beyond just the transactional nature of the work they're doing. Yep. The second thing is really understanding that their job and their role contributes to the bigger purpose of the business or the bigger picture, and
Correct.
that people are feeling as though they're improving and growing and doing better. And intuitively, I guess that makes heaps of sense, and certainly mirrors my personal experience in jobs I've had in the past. So
no one likes to be stagnating. And I think the first point, it's, getting back to that, it's knowing that you matter, knowing that someone cares. I mean, let's face it, Rob, we're spending 8+ hours a day in a place of employment, and no one wants to go to a place where they're not feeling valued or appreciated. I mean, that's just, we can tie all these things, these three things I spoke about, back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you know about those. So it's inground in basic psychology, but it's incredibly important. And look, at the end of the day, Rob, it doesn't cost a lot. The things that I mentioned today, anyone can implement. But if someone's in a real bind, I just wanted to say that maybe the advantage that I bring to the table is that it's not just about consulting and then the transference of knowledge. It's about me getting in there and getting up to my ankles and knees and being alongside and mentoring and coaching and teaching and instilling the whole process. Because let's face it, when we talk about establishing new habits, they don't become habits straight away. They need time. And that's what this whole nurturing and coaching and mentoring process means, because I take that responsibility away from the owner and I'm doing it for them so the owner can get on with the things that he or she has to do running the business. So any kind of association there, I see that approach that I take as being hugely helpful.
Excellent. And so if there was one thing that you were going to suggest to a small business owner who may be listening to this podcast and they're on the way back to the office and they're about to walk into a room full of 15 staff and try and, I guess, engage them and steer the culture in the right direction, what would that bit of advice be, or what's the key sort of takeaway from your knowledge?
I kind of alluded to it before, and I think it's worth repeating. It's about the relationships that we have within the workplace. And I'll give you a nice example. So I often go back to sport to find, I love sports. So I'm not a big basketball fan, but if I think about the NBA, for example, so when the time comes for the Olympic Games to be held, I think the talent pool that comes out of the US is absolutely enormous, and they can put a team of absolute superstars together. And on paper, you would say they're going to crush it. But I remember, many times, like a Russian team or a team from, let's say, Serbia, Yugoslavia, something like that. I think even the Spanish team won years ago. They don't have the same talent pool, but I think what they did have, or what they do have, is such a bond, such unity and synergy in the team, and they're playing for a higher purpose. And this is everything that I've been talking about already, Rob. So you can't have a team of individuals each doing their own thing without communication, without great relationships, interpersonal relationships. These teams that have not even half the talent or the stars, they find a way because they're united by the purpose and they want to win it for their country. There's something inherently strong there that obviously a team of superstars is not tapping into. So my advice to business owners would absolutely be to think about, maybe over the weekend, the relationships that they have with each of their people. If they have managers, thinking, does that manager embody the principles and the core values of the organization? And I think that is a huge step, and that can take them I won't say out of the woodworks or out of the fire, so to speak, but I think that's the key takeaway from what I can offer. And that's definitely going to set them on the right path.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Fantastic. Well, Kurt, thanks so much for your time today. It's been really insightful to get an understanding as to the area that you spend your time in. Such an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to getting businesses to perform. If people want to find out more about you or connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
The best way would be just to go to my website. So intelligentbusinessthinking.com.
Yep.
They can meet me, they can find me there, or maybe through LinkedIn, just my name and surname, Kurt Wilkesmann. They can find me there, and we can take things forward.
Fantastic. Well,
Rob,
Kurt, thanks again.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thanks for the invite once again.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Rob.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.